Someone likes you, they text back immediately, make plans, show up, make you feel wanted, and somehow they're boring. But the person who takes 3 days to reply, the one who's always busy, the one who gives you just enough attention to keep you hooked, but never enough to feel secure, suddenly irresistible. Your brain doesn't want the person who's available, it wants the one who's uncertain. Here's the psychology of why you're attracted to people who don't want you, and why the ones who do feel like nothing. There's a concept in psychology called intermittent reinforcement. Sounds complicated, but you've experienced it your entire life. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Pull the lever, sometimes you win, most times you don't. But because the reward is unpredictable, your brain gets flooded with dopamine every time you try. And that's exactly what happens when someone gives you inconsistent attention. They text you at 2 a.m., disappear for days, show up when you've given up, ghost when you're invested. Your brain treats every response like a jackpot, not because the person is special, because the reward is unpredictable. Meanwhile, the person who texts back every time, predictable reward, no dopamine spike, no excitement, just certainty. And to a brain wired for chaos, certainty doesn't feel like love. It feels like boredom. Here's where it gets darker. The less someone wants you, the more your brain convinces you they're worth it. Because if they're hard to get, they must be valuable, right? Wrong. Scarcity creates perceived value, even when there's nothing actually valuable there. Think about it. Limited edition sneakers, sold out concerts. They're not better because they're rare. They feel better because they're rare. Same thing happens with people. The person who's always available, your brain sees them as common, easy, low value. The person who barely gives you the time of day, rare, exclusive, high value. So you chase them, and the more you chase, the more convinced you become that catching them will mean something. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You're not in love with them. You're in love with the idea of winning. Now here's the part that makes you feel crazy. When they finally do want you back, something shifts. The chase is over. The uncertainty is gone. And suddenly, they're not interesting anymore. You spent months, maybe years, trying to get their attention. And the moment you have it, you don't want it. Because your brain was never chasing the person. It was chasing the dopamine hit that came from not knowing. The second they become predictable, the addiction ends. And you're left wondering why you wanted them in the first place. Once you understand this, a lot of painful choices suddenly make sense. This is why people stay in toxic relationships, why they go back to exes who hurt them, why they ignore the healthy option and choose chaos every single time. Chaos feels like passion. Stability feels like settling. So what actually causes this? Attachment theory has an answer. If you grew up with inconsistent love, your brain learned early that affection is something you have to earn. Maybe your parents were loving sometimes, distant other times. Maybe approval came with conditions, attention came with strings. Your brain adapted. It learned that love isn't supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to feel like work. So now, as an adult, safe love feels wrong. When someone is kind, consistent, and available, your brain gets suspicious. This is too easy. Something's off. They must not be worth it. But someone who's distant, inconsistent, unavailable, that feels familiar. That feels like home, even if home was painful. Here's what you need to understand. The person who doesn't want you isn't better than the person who does. They're just triggering an old wound, and your brain mistakes that wound for chemistry. Real love doesn't feel like a chase. It doesn't feel like anxiety, or uncertainty, or constantly wondering where you stand. Real love feels calm, steady, safe. And if that sounds boring to you, it's because your brain is still wired for chaos. The good news? You can rewire it. Start by noticing the pattern. When you feel that pull towards someone emotionally unavailable, ask yourself, what am I actually chasing? Is it them? Or is it the feeling of finally being enough for someone who doesn't think you are? Because the second question is the real one, and the answer won't come from chasing people who don't want you. You were always enough. If this hit too close to home, you're not alone. Subscribe to Cognisync for insights into the psychology most people don't want to face. Until then, stop chasing people who make you feel like you have to earn them.